Now, the repression of feminine aggression, little girls being taught you're not supposed to be aggressive, you're not supposed to fight, you're not supposed to argue, meant that the woman denied her own independent aggression and acted it out vicariously through him. She was the cheerleader on the sidelines while he knocked heads on the football field. Little 8-, 9-year-old girls at Pop Warner League doing their cheers as these 8-, 9-year-old boys are tackling and beating each other up, screaming, "Be aggressive, be aggressive, be aggressive." That's their cheer. She wanted an aggressive man, but the denial of any aggressive urges on her part, such as to control, to be powerful, to hurt, caused her to express all of her aggression passively or indirectly. So she would do it by blaming, by nagging, making a man feel guilty, having endless physical and emotional symptoms, doing passive-aggressive things such as lateness, forgetfulness, misunderstanding, subtle undermining, keeping an eagle eye out for his misbehaviors. Resolution of conflict with the feminine woman was impossible, because when an argument would start, she would do one of 4 things. She would cry, she would blame, she would withdraw, and she would punish. The Earth Mother saw herself as blameless victim and the male as the love-denying, peace-spoiling animal. In therapy, when the Earth Mother comes to therapy with her macho husband, in fact, classic masculine-feminine relationships breeds rage in the woman and guilt in the male. And when these couples come into therapy 2, 3, 5 years into the relationship, 10 years into the relationship, it's totally predictable what you're going to see. You're going to see a raging woman and a guilty man. A woman with a bottomless well list of injustices, cruelties that she feels have been perpetrated, and a guy who's apologizing and hiding and lying and evading and feeling guilty for all the things that go on. It's built into what I call the actor-reactor interaction. In fact, where men, as I say, were men self-caring, they would have applauded feminism, because feminists are saying, among other things, we're not going to sit on our aggression anymore. Well, the traditional feminine woman was impossible to relate to, because she always saw herself as blameless. She always saw the man as a heavy, and you could not resolve conflict with her. Anything negative that came up, she would withdraw. She would punish. She would withhold affection. She would withhold sex. She would cry. Likewise, her autonomy was repressed. She was taught to be dependent. So she sought out the strong, unneeding man, her hero. He didn't lean on others. Indeed, if he had any other close relationships, she frequently, subtly or directly encouraged their end. A close relationship or friendship of his was a threat to her security. It's not atypical for adult males in our culture to have no close friends at all. In the traditional relationship, the woman, a sex object, married the man, a security blanket. Dependency breeds rage. She wanted to lean on him, but then hated him for it, feeling controlled and blocked. Likewise, the feminine woman was not supposed to be assertive. To this day, even in 1979, and I think we're never going to have liberation until women recognize their part in this lockstep dance, to this day, single women, and I know this because I'm a single man for the last 6 or 7 years, to this day, single women rarely initiate a conversation with a man, rarely initiate dates, almost never take a phone number from a man before he asks for one first, rarely drives the car, rarely chooses the restaurant, rarely pays the check, rarely chooses the movie, rarely makes the first sexual move. On the traditional courtship dance, which I think highlights the actor-reactor experience more than anything else, he acts, she reacts. And then she comes to hate him for imposing his will. But her lack of assertiveness creates a vacuum that means either he must act or nothing will happen. Women want decisive, take-charge men, but then resent them and say, I am being controlled. Likewise, the feminine woman, as part of her femininity, learned that horniness and sexuality was primarily his need. Now, I particularly salute the feminists and many of the writers in this area for liberating women's sexuality, because The feminine woman who denied her sexuality began to use it as a form of power and control over the male. Likewise, the feminine woman, the traditional feminine woman who denied her sexuality, said, I can only feel sexual in the context of an intimate, deep, meaningful relationship, so to speak, as a reward for his loving, good behavior. Without that behavior as the key to her chastity belt, she said, in effect, I don't need it, you do. I can enjoy it under certain conditions when your good behavior releases my sexual desire, but I can also do without it. Even then, she would often say, why can't you just hold me? Why can't we just lay here and touch each other? Why do you always want to have sex right away? The denial of her sexuality caused her to overreact to his and to hate him for it. She can't understand it, and she may come to conclude, as Marilyn French did, as Susan Brown Miller did, that all men are rapists. Indeed, the more feminine she was, the more crudely sexual he seemed to be. Indeed, the masculine-feminine relationship has nothing in common, and in effect, the woman is a sex object in that. Any person who does not assert herself, who does not have an autonomy, who does not have a sexuality, becomes, so to speak, an object where there is really nothing else in common between the man and the woman, except perhaps she feeding him and he seeing her as a sex object. Now, masculinity, on the other hand, turns men into guilt-ridden, compulsive work machines. First of all, masculinity is hollow. Men in our culture are brought up by women, and he spends a lifetime trying to deny that identification. More than anything else, masculinity is a defense against his femininity. It's a defense against dependency, passivity, emotions, fear and weakness, and anything he considers feminine. So in protesting too much fashion, he becomes super autonomous, hyperactive, steely rational, macho proving, I don't need anybody, I'm afraid of nothing, I don't need sleep, I'm a logical, controlled problem solver who doesn't let feelings get in the way. Now that's all. None of the masculine attributes, such as aggression, independence, etc., are wrong in their own right. It's their rigidity and the lack of fluidity of them that makes them sick and defensive. In other words, it's okay to be aggressive if you can also be submissive. It's okay to be independent if you can also allow yourself to be dependent. It's great to be super active if you can also enjoy sleeping and doing nothing. But the masculinity puts him on a very narrow band of permissible behaviors. This makes him a time bomb. He can't acknowledge needs, so he doesn't get his met, and he hates the world for it. Warmth towards other men makes him suspect of homosexuality, so he isolates himself and feels lonely and alienated. The denial of his dependency makes him see the world as a jungle where he can't count on anybody. His need to be a sexual performer makes sex another contest, final exam time every night, another anxiety-ridden job, and what most men don't need is another job.